everybody, welcome back to Aamsuntitledpodcast. I'm Am. Hi, if you've never met me before, it's really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for clicking on to this podcast. This podcast is fairly new. I've been doing this for about 2 months, I want to say, now. But so basically this podcast is just a podcast dedicated to my love for books, TV shows, that sort of thing. Any sort of life advice that I can give if I get like a really interesting question on Instagram that I feel the need to give advice on, as opposed to just messaging the person back, I will do that. So at the minute we're currently talking about the Percy Jackson book. So in the last episode I reviewed the first 5 chapters of the Battle of the Labyrinth book, which is the 4th book in the Percy Jackson series. I'm on Last Olympian currently. I'm taking the notes for Last Olympian. So I will give you guys more details on that closer to the time. I've decided to split Battle of the Labyrinth into 4 parts because there is just so much that goes down in that book. There's just a lot that's going on all the time, so I've made the effort to sort of split these up so I can talk about them in grave detail, and not have to compromise on the episodes being 3 or 4 hours long, because let's be honest, I talk a lot, and I only realised how much I talk when I went to edit my YouTube videos, because they are so long. It takes me so long to edit them. Like, I had to take all of them down and re-upload them because they had some issues with the audio and the thumbnail pictures and stuff. So I had to take all of them down and re-upload them. It has taken me the whole weekend to sort it out, but they are all uploaded and they're all fixed, and hopefully I will never have those issues again. But yeah, so in today's episode, without wasting any more time, because I've been talking for 2 minutes with nothing to do with what's going on in this book, so I'm going to be doing chapter 6 to chapter 10. So if you don't know what I do in these episodes, if you haven't heard one before, I basically give you like a rundown of all the main stuff that happens in the chapters, and then I talk about my favorite moments, any Percabeth moments, any quotes from any characters that I really like, I tend to throw in there as well. And then once I've done the 5 chapters, I give you kind of my final thoughts on what's gone on, basically. And Battle of the Labyrinth is one of my favorite books. I've decided that after Last Olympian goes up, the last part of that book, I'm gonna sort of rank the books as based on my opinion of which one is the best and which one maybe I didn't really like as much, and I'll give you reasons for that. But I'll do that closer to the time. So let's move on. So we're on chapter 6 in the Battle of the Labyrinth book. So the title of the chapter is We Meet the God with Two Faces. So it opens up with the gang inside a tunnel, and then Grover wants to leave because he doesn't understand why Pan would stay somewhere like this. Why would he be hiding underground? Satyrs hate underground. It's like the most unnatural place that there could possibly be. And then as they're walking, Grover and Tyson, they can smell something, like something in the air, something that smells horrible, something that smells bad, a little bit of a hint that something's going to happen. And then they come to a door and meet a man with 2 faces, who is Janus, God of Choices. And basically he's tormenting Annabeth because, if you haven't heard what I said in the previous episode about this book, is Annabeth's been given this choice, but she's refusing to tell anybody what that choice is. And Janice knows that she has to make a choice, and she's basically trying to delay the inevitable. And, Percy, the fatally loyal person that he is, he defends her, saying, just leave her alone. Like, why are you tormenting her about this choice? At this point, nobody knows, apart from Annabeth, what that choice is. It's sort of like a loose thread that Rick pulls later on in the book, but we'll come to that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. And just before Annabeth can make a choice about which door to go through, because they've got to work out which way to navigate themselves through the maze, a woman appears, and she introduces herself as Hera, Queen of the Heavens and the Goddess of Marriage. And then Hera tells them that she's actually specifically come to meet Annabeth. And she tells them that Mr. D, who left camp, and obviously Quintus is there at the minute, has left so that he can check on all the minor gods, because obviously they have to be checked on because they're not important enough to be at Olympus, apparently. So they get Mr. D to go around and check on them. At least they get checked on. You know what I mean? It could be worse, I guess. And then Hera tells them that she can grant Annabeth one wish, and Annabeth wishes that she could navigate herself through the labyrinth. And then Hera doesn't actually help, because she says to Annabeth that Percy already has the answer. And then she tells her seek out Hephaestus, basically, to basically find him. And then Hera reminds Annabeth that she will have to make that big choice at some point. All Hera's done by saving her from Janus is basically delay the inevitable, you could say. And then she disappears, and Annabeth is so annoyed at her. She's like, "What kind of help was that? Oh, I'll grant you a wish, but I won't actually help you." That sarcastic remark in the book is hilarious. I highly recommend reading it. It's really funny. And then Grover tells them that they have to carry on left because he can feel something coming from the right, and they carry on left along the dark corridor. And that's where the chapter sort of ends. So chapter 7 is Tyson leads a jailbreak. So as they were walking down this path, they end up at a dead end, and then Tyson moves the boulder so that they can go through it, and it traps whatever is chasing them behind them. So they were being chased by something on the right. Grover was right. He could sense that there was something coming, but it's been trapped behind the door, basically. And as they're walking, they can hear sobbing in like this outside this huge building, and they realize that they've ended up outside San Francisco. So basically, they walked from Long Island, which is where the entrance to the labyrinth is, into San Francisco. And then they come to a prison, and Tyson, sort of runs and slips through these prison doors, and Grover tells him to stop. And eventually, as they're walking, Percy notices a monster in the balcony. She's very important, remember her. That's what. Tyson then decides to eavesdrop on the conversation that this monster is having, and he realizes that it is Campe. So not Satan's worst nightmare, sorry, a Cyclops' worst nightmare. And Tyson tells Percy that inside the cell is Briareus. I think that's how you say his name. It's a 100-handed creature, monster. I don't know what you'd call it. And he says to Briareus, so basically, if you don't know, Briareus is like Tyson's hero, and he says, we really need your help to win this war, basically. And he breaks the cell bars, and Annabeth begs Briareus to come with them because otherwise he's going to be killed by Campe. And Briareus is just refusing. So Percy comes up with the bright idea of playing rock paper scissors, and he says, if I win, you have to come with me, and if I don't win, then you get to stay where you are, basically. And eventually Percy wins the game. And just as they're about to leave, Campe reappears, and they try to escape from her. Tyson offers to distract her so that the rest of them can escape. And then, as they're running, they re-enter the labyrinth, with Tyson following closely behind. And just as Campe is gaining on Tyson, Percy throws his shield at her, and the door seals them back into the labyrinth again. So that's where chapter 7 ends. Bit of a what would you call it? Fast-paced chapter. There's a lot that goes on in that chapter, but I like it like that. I like when it's fast-paced and it doesn't take forever to get to the point. That's what I love about Uncle Rick's writing. I think he's very good at getting to the point, without dismissing serious details. Yeah, so chapter 8 moves on to something a little bit different, which is we visit the Demon Dude Ranch, and first, the gang stop at a room full of waterfalls. That's where the chapter sort of opens up. And then Brian basically tells them that, he can't help them in this war. And eventually they get to a corridor and they decide that they're just going to camp there for the night and that they will carry on walking in the morning, basically. I don't know how in a labyrinth you'd be able to tell, especially since it's underground, what's morning or what's evening, but whatever. And then, Annabeth basically opens up to Percy that she's really struggling with this quest. Like, she's always wanted to lead a quest, like this is what she's wanted, but it's actually a lot harder than she thought it was going to be. And Percy sort of reassures her that you're doing great, like you're doing the best that you possibly can. And they basically talk about all the adventures and all the quests that they've been on together. It's a really nice, like, wholesome moment. Like, we have to remember that this is not Percy and Annabeth's first rodeo. Like, they've been through hell and back together. Literally, they've been to the underworld together. So, you'd think that it possibly can't get any worse for them, but it does, which is really sad. And, Percy tells Annabeth that Nico is in the labyrinth as well, and that they're going to have to find him. And eventually Percy falls asleep and he has a dream about the labyrinth prison. So it's Icarus? Icarus? I don't really know how you say it. And Daedalus, and they've basically built like a set of flying wings And they start to hear explosions outside of the workshop. And the king, who was King Minos at the time, knows that they're trying to escape. So both Daedalus and his son, they put on these wings and they try to escape. And as they're flying over, one of the flying wings breaks, and his son falls into the sea and dies. And that's where the dream ends. Basically, again, that moment's very important. Remember it. That dream is very significant. And then, as once they're all up and they're walking around again, Grover can smell the stench of the underworld, so he knows that Nico is somewhere close by. And eventually, they end up at a cattle guard. And Annabeth tells them that the red cattle are actually sacred to Apollo. So these must be the people that look after those red cattle for him, basically. And they find a two-headed dog and a man. So the man introduced himself as Eurytion, who is also a son of Ares, and he takes them to his boss, Mr. Gray, 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 Gray. I don't really know how you say it. These Greek names really do confuse me sometimes, I'm not gonna lie. Because it's spelled in the book like a certain way, but it's like, how do you say that without it sounding stupid? I don't know. Maybe I'm butchering that. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that. And they see Nico talking to him, and he says that they are here to kill him, basically. And Percy tries to stop him and reason with him. Obviously, Nico is still harboring onto these feelings about Percy. He basically blames Percy for his sister's death, and we talked more about that in Titan's Curse. So if you haven't heard my review of Titan's Curse, go and check it out. And then Gillian takes them on the tour of his ranch, basically, and he takes them to the stables, and they're full of poop. Let's just put it like that. And the way that Gurion is treating these animals, like Grover's absolutely disgusted. And even Percy and them are like, "What the hell is going on?" And then Nico tells him that he's not actually here for Percy's soul. Like, his soul isn't precious enough to trade for his sister's, basically. And then Percy realizes that the ghost that Nico has been talking to, that he's seen through the iris messages, was actually King Minos. He's been talking to King Minos's ghost. And then Gurion reveals that Luke is actually paying good money for them, and that he's actually working for Kronos, like he's supplying the meat to feed his army, basically. And Percy makes a deal with Gurion that, I'll clean the stables for you and you let my friends go, basically. And then Gurion takes Annabeth, Grover, and Tyson out, and he leaves him in the stables. So chapter 9 is I Scoop Poop. So Percy talks to the horse and that are in there, and they're like man-eating horses. They're quite scary, actually, in the way that it's described in the book. And they tell him that they'll eat him, basically. And then Percy goes to the river and asks for help, basically, and he meets a Naiad, and she refuses to help him because she doesn't want the pollution going in her river, basically, which is understandable at the end of the day. Like, it's sort of like Percy would be transferring all the poop that he's scooped into her river. So I can kind of see from her point of view why she doesn't really want that. And he compares her to Rachel. Oh, Rachel, Rachel, Rachel. Do you know, when he brings Rachel up, there's a little bit of my shipping card that hurts because I'm just like, why? Why is he still thinking about her? Anyway, sorry, moving on. I'm just sour. I'm just sour. And she gives him a seashell and she says, what belongs to the sea can always return. And she disappears, basically. So Percy just can't understand. She's giving him like a random seashell. Like, what the hell is he supposed to do with that? And he throws it on the floor, and then out spurts water. So it's basically like a water source, and the water helps him to clean out of the stables. And once the stables are completely clean, Percy goes to Gurion and says, I've cleaned out the stables. Now you have to let my friends go. And obviously Gurion refuses. He goes, well, you didn't make me swear on the Rev of Styx, so I'm not going to do it. And, Gurion attacks Percy. And let's say he's not necessarily doing as well with Riptide. So he takes a bow off the wall in Gerion's house and prays to Artemis and Apollo to help him kill Gerion. And then he shoots him in the chest and he evaporates. Like every other monster does, basically, and Percy manages to save his friends. Eurytion is actually glad that Gurion is gone because he's been doing his bidding for so long. He's been taking orders from him and he's been a pretty shitty boss. So he's finally happy to get rid of him. And, Percy tells him that, look, I'm giving you the opportunity, like, you take good care of these animals, basically. And then Percy tells to Nico, God, can't talk. Percy says to Nico, you stay with us until we've completed the quest. And Nico refuses. He's still angry with Percy about Bianca's death. And obviously, Percy never ever should have made that promise to him that he would bring Bianca back safely. But it's also Percy's not the only person to blame in that situation. And Annabeth jumps to Percy's defense straight away. Like, look, what happened down there was not Percy's fault at all. Like, even though she wasn't physically present in that moment, she knows for a fact that Percy would never hurt his friends intentionally. And Nico is still holding on to this hope that he can bring his sister back. And Percy says, "Okay, if that's what you want to do, let's talk to her. Let's bring her." And Nico says that she hasn't been answering me for like I've been calling out to her and she doesn't answer. And then he realizes that Bianca is actually the one who's been showing him those iris images of Nico talking to King Minos. So basically, that a way of her saying to Percy that help my brother, save him, basically. And Percy says maybe it's because I wasn't with you that she's not responding. Let's call her, and that's where the chapter ends. So chapter 10 is we play the game show of death. So they summon the spirits of the dead, you could say. And instead of Bianca's ghost coming, Ghost Minos appears, and he basically tries to disrupt the ritual and turn Nico against Percy's. And basically saying that, oh, you can't trust Percy, and then like he's basically trying to brainwash Nico, in other words. And because Nico is very vulnerable at the minute, like he's very overcome with grief and guilt, and I know what grief can do to someone, and especially in a situation like that, I can genuinely empathize with him and I know how he feels. And Ghost Minos tells them that they cannot trust Daedalus. He's not somebody who can be trusted. And he also reveals that what happened to Chris, which is what we talked about at the beginning of the book. Obviously, if you didn't know, I'll give you a little rundown. Chris went into the labyrinth and he came back and he went absolutely insane. And he reveals that it's actually Minos that has done that to him. He did it on purpose to Chris, basically. And then Nico tells Minos to leave and he obeys, and then appears Bianca's ghost. Now, this is the bit that I was most excited for because I wanted to see how this moment was going to play out, and the way it plays out definitely didn't disappoint me at all. So, Percy goes up to her and he apologizes, and she says, like, it's okay, there's nothing you could have done. And she says something really powerful, which is that she doesn't regret her decision. Like, she knows deep down that she made a bad choice and she paid the price for that choice, basically. And she tells Nico that she was hoping that she didn't want to respond on him on purpose. She didn't want to respond to him on purpose because she was hoping that he would give up hope trying to talk to her. And she tells him that in this instance that Percy is right, and that in fact it isn't Percy that Nico is angry with, it's her. He's upset with Bianca for abandoning him, basically. It's a really, really powerful moment. Like, what I love about Rick's writing is he creates characters and he creates narratives that teach the audience a lesson. Like, a lot of the time, like, we'll use suicide as an example. Just going on a complete tangent here, but I'm going to link it back. Just stay with me a second. So it's like a lot of people get angry with the person that's gone. They're angry at the person that takes the decision, and they take that frustration out on somebody else, and that's not fair. And that's the same instance here. Like, Nico is blaming Percy just because Percy promised to look after his sister, when in actual fact Percy didn't take the decision to sacrifice Bianca. Bianca sacrificed herself to save them. So she actually did the heroic thing. And Nico isn't angry at Percy. As much as he thinks that he is, he might be a little bit angry at him for hurting for not keeping his promise, but truly he's angry at Bianca because she's left him alone, and they've been together for over 70 years. Like, when they were trapped in the Lotus Casino, like they were together from day one. So the grief that he's feeling is over losing his sister, his companion, somebody who stayed with him all this time. And it's really sad, actually. It's really upsetting, and like it's such a gut-wrenching scene to even read. Like, my chest like tightens when I read stuff like that, because I'm just like, oh, I feel their pain. Like, I know exactly how it feels, and it's not a nice feeling. And yeah, I'm glad that Rick puts those moments in there. He's such a intelligent writer, is what I can say. So, so, so clever the way he creates situations, and he puts characters in situations that real life people would be in. And he says, look, this is the way the characters dealt with this, but that's not the way to do it. In other words, he gives you like a moral compass, which I love. I love that about his writing style. And, eventually Bianca says, goodbye to Nico, and she tells him that she loves him, and she disappears, basically. So now it's going to be about how Nico sort of handles that information, but we'll talk about that when we get there. And then that night, Percy has a dream about Luke, Kelly, and Campe. Luke says that he wants the invasion of Camp over with. So, in other words, there's a little bit of good Luke shining through there. Like he knows deep down that he's doing the wrong thing, but because of this neglect that he's felt from his father, he feels the need to carry on. I love that Rick puts moments where the goodness in him, like there's still a good part of him, like he's not completely overtaken by Kronos at this point. There is still good in him, which I love. I love that. I think he has the most impressive character arc in these books, but like I said, we'll talk more about that when we get there. And all he says is, "I know my duty." And the Campe obviously is very pissed off about what has happened. Like she couldn't get her hands on Tyson for freeing Briars. So Luke has basically promised her revenge, in other words. And, Kelly tells them that, there's somebody eavesdropping on our conversation. And that's where the dream ends. And then Percy's second dream is he sees Daedalus and a young boy. And this young boy is basically one-upping Daedalus, in other words, and he's just saying that I'm going to be a better inventor than you, blah blah blah. And then Daedalus tosses him a bronze beetle, and with that, it starts dragging this young boy up into the sky, and I think it drops him and it kills him basically. And then, Percy hears Athena tell Daedalus that he will pay forever for that one mistake, for taking that one course of action. Because Daedalus is also a child of Athena, like Annabeth. And you know what Athena's like in this book. Like, her love is very conditional. Like, you do something good, she's happy and she loves you. You make one mistake, she'll never love you again. And she will just continue to torment you for that one mistake. And unfortunately, there are mothers out there that are like that. So Rick has put a very, very real version of what you call a conditional mother. Like they're a mother when it's convenient to them, as opposed to being a mother despite what the child is going through. So yeah, I also liked that as well. I thought that was very clever that he's put that in there. And then Grover tells them, that it's been 7 days since they've actually left camp, and that he's run out of time, and that his searcher's license is basically now going to be officially taken off him, in other words. And, Grover says something to Percy that he wishes that he was more like him. And it's like, oh, that's so sweet. Like, they have such a lovely relationship because obviously Grover has been there from the beginning. Percy met Annabeth later on, but Grover's been there since Percy stepped foot into this world. And they just have such an adorable relationship. And obviously in Sea of Monsters, when Grover went missing, I think that was a really big thing for Percy. Like the person who brought him into this world had got like into this demigod world had gone. Like the person who was like, what would you call it? Like just there when he needed someone had disappeared. And I think that's why he was so adamant about finding him in Sea of Monsters. And then, Eurytion gives Annabeth this necklace that Hephaestus had given him, and he said that look, it will take you to Hephaestus basically. And Annabeth drops it on the floor and it transforms into like a little metal spider, and Annabeth starts screaming because obviously she's got arachnophobia. I would scream too. I'm awfully terribly afraid of spiders as well, so I'd probably have the same reaction. And they all decide to follow the spider, but it's quite difficult because it's walking quite fast, and they can basically Tyson can basically hear it, and Grover, and they just basically follow them. And then, as they're following this spider around, they end up finding a sphinx, and it transforms into a game show. And there's a game show host, and she basically says, "If you get any of the riddles wrong, I get to kill you." In other words, and Annabeth says, like, "I'm offering to answer all your riddles to protect my friends." In other words. And as she's giving her these riddles, Annabeth is getting all the answers right, and she says, these riddles are like an insult to my intelligence, basically. And it's not really riddles; they're just general knowledge that anybody would know. And the Sphinx threatens Annabeth, and Tyson instantly jumps to try and save her. And Percy says that she's after you, so you wear your invisible cap on, you run away, and we'll sort of come behind you. And the chapter ends with them running through the tunnels. So that's the end of chapter 10. So that is where I am going to stop. because I don't want to talk too much about the next few chapters because the next few chapters are very, very exciting. It's what I've been waiting for, and you will hear my excitement in the next episode. So I'm just going to give you sort of my final thoughts and feelings about what's happened in these last few chapters. So I love that Rick has created this loose thread about this choice that Annabeth is going to have to eventually make. It really does keep you on the edge because I remember when I was reading the books for the first time, I always wondered what that choice was going to be. Like I literally spent hours being like, "Oh, what big choice could she possibly have to make?" And I'm glad that he's created that loose thread that he can pull later on in the book. I love that there's more of Tyson in a heroic light. He is such an adorable character, but there are times where he displays a kind of bravery that Percy shows as well, which I really appreciate. I'm glad that Rick has given him that spotlight, you could say. He's such a good character, and he's just like Percy in every sense, I think. And I love that there's more of Percy and Grover's relationship in this. Like I said, because they are the foundation of a lot of Percy's relationship. Like the reason why Percy can go into camp is through Grover. Grover obviously has the job of taking him to camp, so I'm glad that they have that sort of relationship. I love that there was more about what's going on with Luke, and I love that there was like hints through Percy's dreams about Daedalus, because obviously he's sort of the invisible string in this part of the book, in the first half of the book, because there's not much about him until later on in the book where we actually physically get to meet him. So I'm glad that there's more of that. Rachel is sort of hanging over the story as well. She's the invisible string. Percy talks about her a lot. Again, it crushes my shipping heart. I don't think I have anything against Rachel apart from the fact that she's getting in the way of my ship, which is annoying me a little bit. And you probably hear like the detest in my voice when I'm talking about her sometimes. No hate to her, I just hate that she's trying to intervene in the Percy and Annabeth relationship. I don't like it. And I love that there was like the Nyanka's Nyanka, you know, sorry, Bianca's ghost appearance. I thought that that moment was really good. I think it's one of my favorite chapters in this bit because it kind of brings the same way it brings Nico like that closure, it brings the closure to the audience as well about what actually happened. I love that she doesn't blame Percy for what happened, and I love that she accepted the consequences of her actions and she died a heroic fate. Like there was nothing um like the way she died wasn't in vain. Like she died to protect her friends, and I really appreciate that. She was so young as well. She's the youngest character in the story, and the way that she died was really sad. And that moment was so intense as well when they're talking to the spirits. And the same way like Nico got that closure, us as the audience got that closure as well. And I think it was a huge weight off Percy's chest as well because he felt so guilty about her death. And I'm glad that she sort of cleared that up and said, I don't blame you for it whatsoever. So yeah, those are the first 10 chapters. I've got how many chapters left? I think there's how many in this book? Is it 20 again? I think it's 20. Yes, it's 20. It's only Last Olympian where there's 23 chapters. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. Like, I think Battle of the Labyrinth is definitely one of my favorite books in the season. In the series. Jesus, having a brain moment, guys. You're just gonna have to bear with me. But yeah, like I said, I really loved that there was more of her Bianca in this, and you know I understand Nico's pain and it takes him a long time to get over it, but that's grief in general anyway. Like the pain, I read a quote somewhere, it's like the pain doesn't get easier to bear, you just get stronger, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen to Nico. Like I said, I love Rick's writing style. I love the way he creates characters. He makes them, even though they're demigods, like he makes them very real and very human, which I love that about his writing, and he's so clever. The way he creates things is just like chef's kiss, amazing. So I'm going to stop talking now. I hope you guys enjoyed that review. In the next episode, I'm doing chapter 11 to 16, I think. I think it's to 16. I can't remember, guys. Oh, hold on. That's the wrong that's the wrong book. This is Battle of the Labyrinth. Let's have a look. I'm doing up till I think it's oh, no, no, sorry, chapter 11 to 15 because there's a lot that goes down in those chapters. few Percabeth moments coming up that I'm really excited about. I apologize if I blow anybody's eardrums off when I'm talking in the next episode, but stay tuned for that. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's at Aamsuntitledpodcast. You can listen to episodes on Spotify as well if that's something that you prefer. Um, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I took a lot of my posts down and I've re-uploaded some. Like I said, I had to fix the YouTube videos, so it felt weird to have those posts up where I was talking about the YouTube video. So I've taken a lot of posts down. So don't be alarmed. I've done it on purpose. It is me. I've changed some things, but I hope that you guys are enjoying this. I'll hopefully have part one, part two, part three, and part four of Battle of the Labyrinth up by this Thursday, Friday at the latest. I promise I will try my best to get it up. The YouTube channel videos will be working this time. I promise. I will make sure that they are working, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next episode. Mwah. Bye. Big hug to anybody that needs it as well, and I will see you guys in the next part of the review. Bye.